Good morning, good afternoon, good night, my dears. Welcome to the Worldwide Podcast, Belarus edition. And from the scratch, guys, I feel really glad for Anastasia to accept our invitation because she's pregnant and means a lot for us to have her right here. But before introducing our guest, I just want to ask how Guilherme is. How's it going, bro?
Hey, listeners. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Been surfing, been training, been having fun. But man, today is another Eastern European country, and I'm also fascinated by them. I hope we do them soon, all. But yeah, so I have a few things with this country that we're talking about today. For some reason, I was always a little bit afraid about this country, about Belarus. I cannot tell you why. It was just something about being in the interior of Europe and being related maybe to Russia, who knows? But I always had a little bit of a thing because I never heard anything about the country, and I always heard like a few things that were kind of negative. So this podcast will be amazing for me, so I can get to know a little bit more about the country and maybe to bring more people to also get cultured about them and to say, yeah, it's a great country to do tourism if you'd like the things that it has. So yeah, we have our guest, Anastasia. How are you doing?
Hi. Good. Amazing.
And yeah, you are pregnant. How many months are you now pregnant?
I'm currently 8+ months, so I have
Eight
about
plus.
4 weeks to go or so.
The baby is going to be born live on the Worldwide Podcast. That's going to be
Jesus, bro.
That's not gonna go viral. I don't know.
That's a highlight reel. That's a highlight reel for sure.
We appreciated 10 plus her to accept the invitation because 8 plus I didn't know you were too far in this pregnancy. So wow, congratulations.
It's a lot,
about to get born. Wow, amazing.
Thank you. Let's make this baby famous.
Yeah, for sure. May him is it?
Oh, she's kicking right now. She's like,
she?
yes. She's like, yes.
So it's a girl. So you're going to have a girl. Amazing.
That is amazing.
So you gotta make an Instagram for her. This is the first step.
It's interesting because I've decided actually my husband is very social media active, has lots of followers in various platforms, and used to basically overshare every tiny little detail about his life. I'm quite transparent also on social media, but we both agreed 100% from the start that this child is not going to have a social media presence. We're going to hide her until she can make these decisions for herself as much as we can. So, it's going to be a mystery.
That's a pretty good decision, actually.
That is pretty good decision.
Yeah.
It can always go two paths, or you either do it really nice and you show how you are with your life with the kid, how you act with the kid and how you babysit him and everything, or you could just do that way. And the people that try to do it midway never works out. It never works out. So you either commit to it or you just say, okay, no, when she gets older or when he gets older, he'll make that decision for himself. An example that we actually talked a little bit on our Philippines podcast was actually Adam22 and Lina the Plug. They're obviously big famous, but they actually said, you know what, we're going to show how we treat our kid and how we bring her to the planet. And it's been amazing. And I actually love to see it. So it's also good content, I would say.
For sure.
To also teach parents how to what to do with the kid and some tips and tricks. So I think for that is really nice. But yeah, from my point of view, you either commit to it because some parents, they post their baby, but they post like a sticker over the face. I'm like, either you post it or you don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like that, actually. Really like that. So a question for João, actually. João, do you know more about, before our Moldovan episode, did you know more about Moldova or Belarus? Because I think those two countries are the least talked about countries in Europe. Besides Liechtenstein and all those really small countries, I think Belarus and Moldova are the ones who are like more shadow banned in the way. Do you have more information on which one?
I have this background of living in Poland, so I got to know more about Belarus when I was living right there. Because all those political stuff, I was really into Polish politics because when I was in the country, there was an election going on right there. So I got to know more about your neighbor countries. But yeah, I totally knew more about Belarus than Moldova, for example. But yeah, the situation right there, it's not too good still, I guess. I mean, back in 2019, I was living in Poland. I got to know not good shit about Belarus. And I do agree with you, Guilherme. I kind of was afraid of going there and traveling to there because I'm kind of a crazy traveler. I like to get to know countries. And when I was in the Eastern Europe, I was traveling to Lithuania, Lithuania, and all those Estonia countries, and it was pretty amazing. But then when came up the opportunity to go to Belarus, I was kind of, bro, and I'm not too white to go there. I'm kind of black,
Yeah.
and I was feeling really bad about those right party government going on right there. So I kind of, stayed in Poland, even though the government in Poland is right party and oriented too. So
yeah, it's interesting that you felt safer in Poland than in Belarus, because on some levels, I mean, Belarus has its own massive challenges and we'll talk about them, but I feel like Polish government is not necessarily very open either. So
no,
yeah,
not at
it's
all.
interesting that was like an extra. And I think that's what you guys said, like, no, it's a black box, like most people just don't know about it. So like Poland is in the EU, it's in the Eurozone, like you hear about it, and Belarus is like a little like hidden enigma that most people
I think that's why,
yeah,
from my point of view, the biggest fear and the biggest documented fear is fear of the unknown. If you tell someone before the war in Ukraine, if they rather do tourism in Ukraine or in Belarus, 99% of people were going to say Ukraine, because they know about Ukraine. They know about Chernobyl. They know about Kiev. They know about other parts of Ukraine. But Belarus, in the south, but Belarus is such a, as you said, an enigma. It's unknown. So people don't know about it. So they fear it in a way. That's why I feel like the worst thing in tourism is not speaking about the country, not projecting something touristic about the country. That's what happened with Moldova. And that's why we talked about how is it the least touristy country in Europe, because there's not enough image and tourism related information for people to visit the country, even though it has a lot of good things like the wine that we talked about and all. But Belarus, I feel like it also falls in that department. I feel like maybe the government doesn't give too much subsidiaries. I pronounced that word so wrong. Money to the touristic department, maybe to project a little bit more about that. Do you have like a reason why that happens?
That is a very good question. I feel like there have been attempts to introduce the so-called like agritourism in Belarus, which is like basically you go to the farm, you disconnect, you do sauna and I don't know, pick apples and sit by the fire. Belarus is quite a agriculturally focused country. But it's been these attempts have been weak, and I think most of Belarusian economy in general, in tourism included, is turned towards Russia. So even if there is promotion happening, they're basically trying to sell these services to Russia. Russia is a massive market. It's friendly. It's close by. It's convenient. The language is the same, right? Belarusians speak Russian, and so there was a funny thing that happened when Russia banned casino business some years ago, and Belarus just like all of a sudden opened up a dozen, for such a small country, just like dozens of casinos almost overnight, just to attract this demographic from Russia, people who want to come in and gamble. So I feel like there's just haven't been a lot of focus on tourism, but also take my opinion with a grain of salt, because I haven't lived there in the last, 17 years. So I only kind of see what I see from the outside. But I know that there have been attempts to make it an attractive like IT hub, and there have actually been international conferences with like Americans and Europeans and South Americans, North Americans coming in, and pretty big names for the tech conferences. So I know that the tech sector, same as in Ukraine, right? Lots of great tech talent is in Belarus. So there have been definitely attempts on like that front. And then there was this crazy friendly crypto law got established, where they were basically like, anybody who wants to do stuff with crypto, come in, it's for free. But those things come with a dictator as a little side dish, so you never know what to expect, because Belarus is legitimately a dictatorship run by the same guy for more than 20. Our first president is still the only president running the country, and he has unprecedented power at this point. He killed or exiled anyone who could disagree with him. So those things always come with a grain of salt. Like, yes, I want to go and visit and enjoy all these perks, but things can get tricky.
Yeah, sure.
Are still heated up.
Yeah.
And was it before the war, all those, IT and tech developments, or right now it's still going on? Because after all those sanctions going on between, Belarus and Russia to the rest of the war, how is it? How is it going on right now?
So I haven't been there since 2020 because I don't feel like it's since like the attempt at the. So let's break down a little bit the timeline, so we understand how Belarus and the war and everything relates to each other. So in 2020, there was an attempt at a peaceful revolution to overthrow the dictatorship in a peaceful way. I was there. It was amazing. It unfortunately failed. Wow. And since then, basically, Belarus, like whatever developments have been made before 2020, with some liberalization of society, with some economic, technical, art, even tourism, with all these areas that basically has been rolled back, because the attempt was very serious to get rid of the dictatorship, and there was lots of international. That's when Belarus got in the news, right?
Yeah,
there was lots of international coverage, and then since then, basically, Russia was like, we cannot have this. So Russia really tightened its grip on Belarus from the military perspective, from the financial perspective, and basically pulled Belarus into the war, into the offensive against Ukraine. And given that our president is basically, can I curse on this podcast?
Yeah,
definitely.
do
it, please.
Yeah, like basically, the president of Belarus is Putin's little bitch. So Putin says jump.
I was schooling it, and people were saying that Vladimir Putin's shadow. So people call it
Muppet
in the
international
Muppet as well. Media, right, like this.
I think that's very fair. And so, given all that, Belarus is now part of this war, and on the wrong side of history. Even though the people are all against it, in the great majority, the president just, and the government, which is basically concentrated in the president, doesn't really follow the will of the people. There is no true democracy, no true voting. Belarus is in this very unfortunate situation as the aggressor, essentially, even though Belarusian troops technically haven't attacked yet, but the territory is being used as a launching pad for missiles in the war. And, you can't have progress in a situation like this, right?
Yeah. I mean, dictatorships are so hard to overthrow. I mean, I just remember the Portuguese one in 75, I think.
Yeah.
And it was a whole situation. Like, there was, like, if the people hadn't really gave their all braveness into the streets and just said, we don't want this anymore, get out, it was impossible. And you need the braveness, because if you go on the streets and you riots, you can go into a torture chamber and you can get punished. So you need to have that in mind when you go riot. So you need the bravery to do it. And I can only imagine, because Belarus is the last dictatorship in Europe. Like, it's the only one currently. So it's crazy to me, because people, when they think of Europe, they think, okay, Sweden, Norway, progressiveness,
right,
all that. But then we still have a dictatorship active. And it's crazy how other countries can't do anything about it, because the government is still the government of Belarus, and no other government can really infiltrate and say no, like, stop this, because it's still, it's none of their business. Solutions, what would you say a solution would be to end this? I know it's very complicated, but is there something that can be done?
and there is a war going on, so it probably makes it more difficult. I'm not sure.
That is, I mean, that's a question
The most complex
of a
question.
lifetime, right?
Of course, of
Yeah.
course.
I think there's one thing I can only say from kind of what I observed myself. I'm not, a politician, but I was there as part of this movement in 2020, part of the revolution. And Belarusians are suffering from their own, what you talked about, courage, right? Bravery. Belarusians are suffering from two things. The big neighbor, because Putin always backs it up. Like Putin already had this war planned, so he wouldn't have been like, okay, I guess Belarus is now democratic. Well, too bad. I'm just gonna let it go. Like he wouldn't have done it, right? So there are two things. There is Putin who backs it up always with military, with money, with terror, with whatever is needed to control, to keep the police state going, keep people in jails and etc. And then there is the internal Belarusian mentality, which is for better or for worse, tolerance and peace-loving nature, and some meekness, I would even say. I would say meek is a good way to describe it. Softness are also Belarusian natural traits, both for better and for worse, right? Because on the one hand, that makes Belarusians very friendly, very hospitable people. And on the other hand, there just was not a force, a show of force, a show of, I'm ready to die for this. I'm ready to fight until the last blood. There was a small percentage of those people, but most people who were pro-democracy were also like pro kind of Western civilized democracy. And I feel like what was missing was the resolve to basically go all the way. When Ukraine had their revolution against the Russia installed president, lots of people died, and they knew they were going onto the streets saying, I will die tonight. I've accepted it, right? And in Belarus, that was not the sentiment. Again, I'm not trying to blame the people, because I feel like, just this long history of oppression and of being under this, having their independence squashed even before the dictator. This Belarusian identity, national identity, has been under threat for centuries, mostly from Russia. So there are reasons for it, but I do feel like this kind of like extra tolerance, extra diplomacy, extra lack of this desire to basically give. I mean, I wouldn't have given up my life. Like I knew the situations that I was still semi-safe in, and I knew the situations in which I had to run, and I ran because the alternative is not even death, it's like torture, which is worse.
Sure.
And people have died for sure, like through that revolution, and every death was mourned. But there wasn't this like overwhelming resolve, like we going to arm. Well, there was also no way to arm the population. That's another thing. If you're going out with bare hands and white flowers and women in white dresses against police, highly trained, brutal police forces who will stop at nothing. I mean, that's kind of what happened. It was flowers against police stun grenades. And I think that's a big contribution to why it didn't work out.
It's a little bit than Western civilization, even though Belarus is Western civilization because it's Europe. But obviously, if we compare Spain and France and Portugal and all of Central Europe, it's a little bit different than Eastern Europe, because, I mean, especially Belarus, even if there's a civil war, I think the president can just say to Putin, hey, we need some hands in this, bring your army into my country and stop this. And it's like,
for sure,
Russia has the biggest and most powerful army in the world, more powerful than the US, even though the US probably has the most money. Russians are built different, simple as that. And
we don't know anymore. Look, Ukrainians proved them wrong. We'll see.
Yeah.
I would have agreed with you a year ago, but look what's happening now.
Sure.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. We can always have
breaking
surprises.
Stereotypes during this platform, Gay. Don't forget about it, bro.
It's not the strongest anymore.
And about what you said, I mean, it's only different, I mean, between Spain or French, all those revolutions there when and going on right there. It's totally big deal you fight against a dictatorship than fighting against, I don't know, sanction or kind of stuff that might going on in your country. For example, those French, I mean, I forgot those revolutions of those guys with
the yellow jackets.
the yellow jacket. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's totally different, bro. We fight against, you know, a thing going on in your country than fighting against the dictatorship or trying to, you know, make your country a democracy um, right
No,
now.
for sure.
So yeah, I can imagine, you know, going on the street with bare hands, only with flowers, and the police just can kill you, and nothing is going on. You know, there is no a war crime or kind of stuff because it's a dictatorship going on right there. It's crazy. I mean, I cannot imagine. I cannot experience. I come from a country that things like this doesn't happen. So it's when those episodes going on, I'm just more a listener than trying to give my opinion and kind of stuff. So wow, I cannot imagine what you guys are
100%.
suffering right there or suffering during this revolution 2 years ago, 3 years ago now.
But I also want to say something else in this like regard. Like, yes, it's a very sad and kind of traumatic chapter because I feel like there was so much hope and so much unity and within the people and so much motivation, and it didn't work out. But it was also one of the most beautiful things I've ever participated in because there was this, like speaking of kind of Western values or democratic values, there was a faith in a faithless situation. There was a faith in humanity. There was a faith in the rule of law. Like every time Lukashenko broke the laws yet again, the democratic movement said, we will not do this. We want to build a society based on transparency, based on a democracy, based on rule of, because if the country doesn't have a rule of law, like it descends into darkness, right? And so there was it was idealistic and silly, but in a way that's kind of what the country, that's what the people wanted their trajectory to be. They didn't want to descend into bloody chaos or authoritarianism. They wanted to hold up those ideals that they talked about in their actions, and that was both beautiful and detrimental. But
yeah, sure,
there was unity. Basically the people came together and they said, yeah, let's just step up and try to do something. And I feel like that's great for sure. That's great to see. I do love that.
So let's say something nice.
I was about to switch.
I was going to introduce it's always funny when we bring guests that have lived a lot in the US because we always talk about it. But let's talk about, when did you decide to move to the US and why the US out of all places?
Completely random, to be honest, because I went for like an exchange program. Was around 2021. And I realized already back then that the country was, Belarus, things were closing, like things were rapidly closing, opportunities were closing, like they were kicking out ambassadors, canceling European accredited education programs, like shut down under false pretense the previous exchange program I participated in. And so I could really feel like things were like the walls were closing in. And I went for this exchange program for the summer. And I just, I realized that if I come back, I might never leave this country again. And I've never been one to just, kind of follow the rules and, well, okay, I guess we'll have to, just deal with this. I was like, that's my chance. I cannot go back. And it was one thing. And the second thing was I just started making really good money compared to Belarus. Like, honestly,
I mean, American money is the biggest. Yes, it's the biggest. And people don't realize that a lot of times. They think Europe gives the biggest bags. Listen, it does not. It does not. I know people in the US, they say they earn very little money. And I look at that and like, sir, don't. The only bad thing, I would say only the bad thing is that the US is very capitalistic, which means that these people earn a lot, but they also waste a lot.
Yep.
They spend a lot because of how capitalistic it is. Sometimes they don't need to spend it, but they just do because everything is thrown at their faces. That's the only thing that I'll say.
For sure. You have to keep the economy rolling. You have to keep it up. But yeah, that was honestly the second thing. I was just like, I made so in Belarus, I worked as a like advertising manager at a publishing agency. And in the US, I waited tables. I was a waitress, my first job. And I made my monthly salary in one day in tips. And I was like, oh shit. So that was also a big, a big wake-up call for me. I was like, I could do much better here. I could help my family. I could help, myself. I could do things that I never imagined doing. And also there was this romantic component, which is I've always loved to travel. And I just was so fascinated because the US is like 50 countries in one for me. Yeah. That's how it felt. It didn't feel like I was in one country. It was like I was in 50 countries. And so when my mom asked me if I'm coming back, I said, Mom, I haven't been to Hawaii yet. I can't.
The goal of anyone.
Not leave until I go to Hawaii. It was this crazy idea. Or to Montana. I want to see moose. Even though Belarus has moose, but Montana moose, they're legendary.
Sure. In the mountains.
And that was, it was a mix of things, but it was never about the US. It just kind of happened randomly, and I escaped. I ran away for a better life, a better opportunity, for a better future.
Pretty cool. And where do you live now?
I currently live in Germany, in Berlin.
Oh, in Germany. All right.
Yeah, so I left the US several years ago. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But before we dive into that, I just want to say that moving countries, that takes courage, especially across continents. Like, even if you went straight to Germany, let's say that still takes courage. But going into another type of society, completely structure, completely different. It takes the biggest courage. So I really respect that. So congrats to you on that. I'm very interested how it worked with the visa. Was it easy? How did you do it?
No, it was not easy. It was a very lengthy, very convoluted process. I don't want to bore you with the bureaucracy, but it was long. No, I couldn't leave the US for several years. I couldn't go back to Belarus for many years. It was expensive, lengthy, stressful, and extremely worth it. Extremely worth it. So, yeah.
I actually I love to talk about visas because I had a very easy time with my visa when I went to South Africa, but I was like a outlier because there was a visa especially for what I was doing there, so it worked amazingly. But the girl in front of me in the embassy, I think it was one of the last times that I went there, the South African embassy, she was doing a visa for the same time that I was going to be in South Africa. And she was doing that visa for 6 months. And I did that visa in 2 weeks. 6 months. It's crazy how visas are so difficult. And again, Canada, the US, and Australia, they're like one of the craziest. Because a lot of people, they just want to go there and they want to live there and they want to work there. So I can only imagine that part.
Slower.
Yeah.
So,
and it depends on the quality of your passport, right? Like, unfortunately, the world is not the same when you travel with a Belarusian passport and when you travel with an American passport. Even they actually both look almost the same. They have the same exactly identical 100% color.
All right.
Wow.
They're blue.
Navy.
Wow.
But very different experience. Yeah.
For sure. The content inside is pretty different. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Was your exchange program a studying program?
It was a work and travel program.
Okay.
Yeah.
Work and travel.
So I had a work permit, which was very helpful.
Yeah. That helps a lot. What was the first state that you actually went or lived in, I guess? Yeah, the state.
Okay, so this is going to be really silly to say why I went there. I went to Nevada, to Las Vegas. to the city
Let's
of
go.
Las
Let's
Vegas.
go.
Let's get it.
I have really good friends from that live in Nevada, and they're always praising Las Vegas. Not again, this is such a funny topic. Not just because of the state, but because of the taxes.
Oh yeah,
It's one of the lowest in the whole
right.
US.
Yeah, there's no state income tax, so that's like super helpful. But the reason
Yeah.
why I chose it, I never knew any of this. I didn't do any research. I was okay, so I was obsessed with Ocean's 11. The
You completely
movie.
went to the most interior, one of the most interior ones. And
Yeah,
deserts.
and I was just like, I want to see. Like, I love that movie, especially there's a scene in Ocean's 11 when uh, one of the characters, I believe it was like George Clooney's characters, he like walks through the Bellagio casino, which is this very famous casino,
Yeah.
and it's so beautiful, and the
I
scene
do
is
remember
closing.
this scene. Yeah,
See?
it's really
It was a
cool.
good
Yeah, I'm
scene.
kind of flashbacking in the movie right here in my mind. And yeah, pretty amazing. Pretty amazing.
And
It's been
and
a,
my
it's been
yeah,
long years
sorry.
I don't watch this movie.
It's a very old movie, and like
Yeah,
my dumb ass was like, I want to see Bellagio. Let's go.
yeah.
That was the whole motivation. That was all I knew about Las Vegas, that it has this casino called Bellagio, and Ocean's 11 was shot there. So I was like, let's go. That's where I want to be. And yeah, it worked out.
That's amazing. That's
Amazing.
amazing.
Yeah.
So again, what were the other states that you lived in? And again, maybe this is a question for later, but what was your favorite as well, just to be in? Doesn't even have
Mm,
to live in. But how was your
yeah,
journey? Let's begin with that, I guess, in the US.
sure. So I've lived in fun places. I basically selected them on the criteria of fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I lived in Las Vegas. I lived briefly in San Diego, California. I
Wow.
lived in Miami.
Miami.
I lived in Chicago.
Wow.
During the polar vortex, during the coldest winters Chicago ever had, which was quite an experience. And my last one was in San Francisco. That's what I feel like I lived the longest.
Best city. Best city of the US for sure.
I love it. It's one of the most beautiful. I would say it's the most beautiful city in the US. Yeah.
Wow.
For sure.
Open-minded and with the best football team right there. Yeah.
What is it, 49ers?
49ers.
I'm going to expose myself because
49ers. I'm a 49er fan. I love this team. I love San Francisco. So I've never been there. I've been to Miami, only in the US. So I have this, wish going there to San Francisco and spend a time right there, watch the 49ers and experience this open-minded vibe that going on right there.
Yeah, San Francisco is gorgeous and it's fun. And it's like the most open, I don't know, the city that blew my mind the most for sure, both in terms of technology and
everybody's
social stuff, and people just commit to the most crazy things. And I remember, like, at the very end of my time there, it was not uncommon to go to work. I worked at different tech startups. It was not uncommon to show up to work in animal onesie and like nobody would blink an eye. It was just completely fine. That's just what people do in San Francisco.
Amazing.
So that was
Silicon Valley. It's something different, just something different.
No, 100%. And you were talking about waitering and the tips. I mean, the tips, especially I can only imagine San Francisco. In the US, they're basically 20%. Everyone has in their mind that they have to tip 20%. I wish that culture came to Europe. That would be amazing. But my God, I can only imagine how much people earn in tips. I mean, not every single one, of course, but I guess if you work in a good diner or if you work in a good restaurant, 20% must be great. So I do have to applaud the American culture on the tip culture that they have.
Well, I'm going to burst your bubble. I'm actually against it now, even though it served me well.
I know why, yeah.
So, I mean, I guess you guys know the reason why in the US the tipping culture is so big. It's because restaurants underpay employees. So there is the minimum wage, right? That's set already kind of, low in many US states. But then there is the minimum waitressing wage, which a lot of people don't know about it, but you can actually pay well below the minimum wage if you have staff that gets tips, because the tips are so good that you basically, the business pays you nothing. And so the question, I remember like my paychecks from the business didn't even cover my taxes. Like they were just, like some people didn't even cash them because what's the point? And, so the question is, what do you value, right? Like you transfer the cost of running business even further onto your customers to pay your salaries, your staff salaries, instead of paying them yourself, plus the health insurance, plus the leave that they don't have vacation. So I used to love the system until I learned more about how things operate in Europe.
Is long term.
Yeah, and it's not. I feel like right now I would rather transfer the European system to the US and vice versa.
But isn't the law, I mean, there in the US that you are allowed to pay less than the minimum wage for those waitresses, or is it in the law?
That's exactly, it's legal. Yeah, it's absolutely legal. Yeah.
That's crazy. Just because of the tip stuff.
You've already changed my opinion right now.
Yeah. I really only said this because south of Europe, they pay very little on waiters, and the tipping is very little as well. So it's like you cannot have like, let's say the Amsterdam type, okay, here's your liquid salary, which is a lot, and you still get tips. Like for example, Portugal, Spain, and Italy, and a lot of other South European countries, it's like you get paid also minimum wage plus the tips. Sometimes they're not even separated equally through the owner and the waiters. So it's like you still get almost nothing, and you work a lot. I mean, waitering is a tough job. I used to waiter when I was 16 and 17, and then I bartended. So I was still in the hospitality business, and it's like it's so tiring. And it's crazy. And
sometimes during the summertime, working 12 hours or more plus 12 hours plus. It's crazy. Yeah, I did the same job right there in close to Vale do Lobo. Guilherme knows where is it? The south of Portugal, and that's crazy. I mean, during the summertime you work as fuck, and the salary that you got doesn't pays off the job that you're doing right there. So it's
definitely not
very overwhelming.
Yeah, it is a tough job, but like at least like we all know when we go to the restaurant, we now treat the staff well, right? Like somebody who worked in the hospitality, they'll be like folding their things neatly always.
Yeah, exactly. So it's good to have that perspective, actually. So I do appreciate that time that I was tortured to then appreciate that service being served to me. For sure. I was trying to find, because I knew something really funny about Vegas. It was the first thing that I really knew about Vegas, and I remember meeting someone from Nevada, and I talked about it. But it was a very famous gay club in Vegas, but I forgot the name. I think it started with a D or something. I don't remember. But I was gonna ask you about it, but I fucked up and I cannot find it. Which is crazy.
I'm so sad because I don't know. I don't know. I would have loved to go. As a woman, I love gay clubs.
And my roommate in Amsterdam, he actually also told me about it. No, I actually told him about it, and he was like, "I went there. How do you know about it?" And I was like, "I don't know. I just came across it once on a video, and I was like, this is so funny."
You have to find the name for me, because I'm so bummed that I never went there.
I'll make that as a mission.
Yeah, I'll take my daughter partying there one day.
Oh my god! And
but for women, sorry to interrupt, but for women, like gay clubs are the best places to go, because nobody harasses you, and the music is great always. It's safe, and gay guys love and know how to dance. So if you want to go have a good time,
the gay
clubs are the best. Yeah,
I guess everywhere in the world, also here in Brazil, girls feel more safer when they go to gay clubs right here. And yeah, for sure, definitely. More in South
I would
America.
say so
South
as well.
America is the culture of going to a normal club. It's crazy, bro. Insane. I mean, I'm kind of almost married guy right now, but back to the single times, it was crazy. It was crazy. It was a jungle, bro. It felt like a jungle
Yeah.
going to the normal club right there. And imagine for girls, it's crazy.
Oh no, it's always an experience. I guess sometimes a lot of times bad for sure. That's actually I was gonna say like a lot of gay clubs that I went to. I even remember in South Africa they were so cool. Like I just wanted to have fun and I didn't want to have annoying guys trying to pick up fights. Which happens a lot in South Africa. I was quite surprised.
Oh wow.
Yeah. The white people there, they just I don't know, they don't know how to act and they always try to pick up fights. But yeah, the gay clubs there, I would always go with my friends and we'd have such a fun time. The vibe is so cool. Um, and yeah, you don't have to be gay just to be in a gay club. You could just go there and have fun and be respectful for sure. I
Love it.
do commend
Love
that. Um, I was gonna talk about Chicago because that's a very interesting place. It's especially in the hip hop culture. It's
Yeah.
named as the most dangerous place in the US because of all the traffic and the beefs, the hip hop beefs. This is more in the hip hop world, I guess, because I know that
Okay.
Chicago is the hub for exportation in the US. I think it was like one of the biggest in the old times where businesses were built and done and then dealt with. I think also the stock market is in Chicago. So how was your experience with that place?
I didn't experience any. Yeah, I
Dangerous
guess
stuff.
I didn't. I think for me, Chicago was really cool because it was the first, like, what I consider first real city that I lived in the US. Because and what I consider a real city is a city like European style cities with infrastructure, not car-based cities, not cities with like small businesses on the corners, cities where you can pop out of your house to grab a pack of milk easily, and you don't have to drive like 25 miles in your pickup truck, you know. And so before that, I lived in more like car dependent, kind of sprawled out, short, suburban American cities. And I didn't love that coming from Europe, right? Minsk is very walkable. Fun fact about Minsk, I want to say some good things about Belarus.
Let's go.
The best sidewalks in the world you'll find in Minsk. I guarantee you that. The most pedestrian friendly is, I wouldn't, maybe not fully, but the sidewalks, like my husband was amazed when I took him there. He was like, the sidewalks are so wide and so clean and there's so much room and it's just beautiful. So like I was used to this walkability, and Chicago was close to that. Like Chicago is very walkable. It has trains, public transport is great. I commuted almost like an hour each day to work, but it felt fine because the train was great. I could grab my coffee on the way. So it was the first real city that I lived in since moving from Belarus, and I loved it. I absolutely adored that I could pop into a museum, their culture life. Oh, the dance performance. Chicago was fantastic, and that.
Wow, that's amazing to hear. Actually, wow,
Yeah.
I love that because every single person, they actually say that Chicago is dangerous, and the only thing that comes to my mind is the hip hop culture because everything else, like I think of, for example, I know that Lollapalooza is also in Chicago, and a lot of big party things like entertainment happens in Chicago, and also like the big hub for exportation and everything. So I love to hear that.
There is, I think, the side of Chicago where you like don't go to, but I was completely unaware of that. I don't know. I would have maybe had a different experience if I'd known about it, but I'm happy I didn't. Nothing bad happened. The worst thing that happened was I got some frostbite on my fingers.
Oh, I'm scared shitless of frostbites. It's because of a very of a horror film called Frozen, where frostbites is a big thing, and since then I'm like I don't want to go. I don't want to get a frostbite because I will want to scratch it, and I know what happens because of that film if I do end up scratching that frostbite part.
Yeah, no. Well, don't go in the winter. Go like in the spring. You'll be fine.
I'll keep that in mind. Did you flick the bean though? That's what I want to know.
Flick the bin?
Yes.
I know what the bin is. I don't know what flicking the bin is. What is flick? See, you know, completely other side of Chicago. Tell me. What's all that?
Flicking the bin is whenever you see the mirror bin, you have to flick it and you have to ask a wish and it supposedly comes true. That's
I mean, flick it like what's okay?
Just rubbing the bin. It's like you know those genius lamps where you have to rub it for a genie to come out. That's where like flick the lamp. It's like rubbing the lamp.
All right.
So every single person just says if you go to Chicago, you have to flick.
Is it a Chicago thing?
Because the bin is in Chicago.
Apparently.
All right.
So the bin is this big glass sculpture, not glass, chrome, I think metallic sculpture of a bean. It's shiny and gorgeous. And people take pictures with fun.
There. All right.
Apparently. So like, you know what I love about this conversation? You're telling me things about cities I've lived in that I've never heard of. And that makes me want to visit them again.
I know the most absurd random things for some reason. And that bean
he does.
Has been in so much media that I've consumed that I don't understand why. It doesn't look that appealing. But for me, it is because of the media that I've consumed. There's even a film where Miley Cyrus starred. I forgot the English word. Now I had a blank. Was in. It's called LOL. And also, there's like a big montage on that bean. I was like, I wanna see the bean. So
I mean, it's a big metallic bean.
I know.
I'm googling it.
Man, I'm motivated
cool.
to flick the bean since a long time. So I have to go to Chicago for that for sure.
We have lots of beans here in Brazil. We need kind of.
But do you have metallic big beans? That's what I need,
bro. We don't.
I need to go to Chicago,
bro.
But Brazil has feijoada. I don't know. Yeah. That's up there.
This upper than is much bigger than the metallic one, no, for sure.
I'll tell you once I flick the bean. So
I have to go. Let's plan a bean flicking adventure. We have a gay club in Vegas that
yes.
And one club in a lot. I feel personally insulted that I don't know. Then there is flicking the bean. Okay, let's go to Miami. What's the cool thing in Miami?
In Miami,
11.
Lots of gators.
The club 11.
Never been, never heard of it. See, that's what I'm talking about. I'm living vicariously through you.
We'll be like the influencers just dropping $1 million on the club floor. I would be the person who's like scrubbing the floor to get the bills. I'd be that poor person trying to pick up for the millionaires, for the crypto millionaires. Again, with the Belarus talk, they go just to 11 just to throw money, basically.
Yeah, well, it's crypto winter right now, so we need to wait until the market, recovers. Right now, the only thing they're throwing is tantrums right now.
Jesus, yeah, those people are not going to 11 right now. That's for sure. They're probably crying, trying to find solutions. The whole game. So what was your favorite state actually? So throughout all the ones that you lived and been in, what was the one that really said, oh, this is definitely my favorite? I love the culture, I love the people, I love the place.
So I'll give you a disappointing answer. Because if I had found that place, I would have stayed there. I didn't. I feel like Chicago was very special for me. Every city I lived in was special. I love them all and I hated them all, So I haven't really found that place. Like Miami, I had an amazing circle of women who were very, we had heart connections. We had very close, warm, the South American Latin
lots of Brazilians
heart-based relationships. Those were great. Chicago was just culturally mind-blowing. San Francisco, of course, work-wise and open-mindedness was very impressive. Las Vegas was just so fun. San Diego is gorgeous. San Diego has the ocean. There's so much water-based culture in San Diego, like salt water-based culture. I loved it. So all of these places had their thing, and I hold it very, warmly in my memories. Yeah. But I've yet to find a place, which is why I keep moving. I'm this, psychotic person who sticks around for a few years and goes to the next.
I love
Close
that.
to the
I love
next
that.
destination.
Love it. Love it.
Little digital nomad, basically.
Basically, yeah. I
And
also had a
So,
chapter of being a nomad for a few years, so like moved around a lot, but yeah,
I mean,
still.
you learn so much by being a digital nomad. So 100%. I always say people in their 20s, if they can, if they have the opportunity career-wise to do it, just do it, just to at least learn more about yourself. And I'm sure you did
about the work.
doing that.
Yeah, for sure.
100%. So why Germany? Now let's get to Germany. Why leave the US and go to Germany? I was actually going to ask you something else, but I can later. Because I'm actually interested in this, since like being so much time in the US and experience their culture and knowing like career-wise it's a very good place. Why switch to Germany?
So I had two reasons, kind of two internal migrations, if you will. One was when I really burned out really badly working in San Francisco. I just burned out. I was not in a good place, and I just wanted some balance because my life had revolved mostly around my career and working. And in San Francisco, it doesn't matter how brilliant you are, you're surrounded by more brilliant people.
Yeah.
And so I always felt like I just had to catch up and had to do more and had to be better. And that eventually exhausted my, reserves. And so I burnt out. And the reason number one was that I wanted to go and have like a little better balance in my life. So I joked that I moved to Europe to slowly eat cakes with tiny forks, something you don't do in the US. In the US, you eat your food on the go or at your desk because there is,
all this stuff to do. Yeah,
there are dollars to catch, right? Or world to change. However you sell your dream to yourself, it's all, boils down to the hustle. So, and speaking of Portugal, Lisbon, you live in Lisbon, right?
I'm from the south, and I'm currently living in the south at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
For some reason I placed you in Lisbon because you said Portugal.
But I go to Lisbon so many times just because the south can be boring, so I just go have fun to Lisbon a couple times and just come back. Boom, boom, boom. But yeah, Lisbon is great. But yeah.
Yeah, so Lisbon gave me that moment. I arrived there. There was a big tech conference. Forget the name of it.
Web Summit program.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah,
arrived there for Web
Summit.
and I had my moment with a cake with tiny fork, and I exhaled, and I was like, I can
good
leave now. Yeah, and also there was this big migration of. I worked in crypto at the time, and there was this big migration of kind of whom I considered a true crypto, pioneers of that whole crowd moving to Berlin. And so I was like, well, the good people are moving to Berlin. I want to have a better work-life balance. Let me go check out Berlin for a few months. So I went there, and it could have been good, but I arrived in November. And so that's when, by the end of November, I was like, I have not seen daylight in quite a long time. Like whatever this like idea of sunlight, like that joke at Berlin with like we don't get sunlight, we get like the NFT of sunlight, we get this like vague representation of what could be sunlight in the winter. So I couldn't keep up, I couldn't keep going with such a dark place, and I was lonely, I was burned out, I was depressed. And so that was kind of my first failed attempt. That's when I went traveling, being a nomad for a few years. And then the second move to Berlin happened also almost by accident. My husband is German. We came here we got engaged, and we came here for a few months, and we were going to continue traveling, and then the pandemic happened.
Oh God! Where did you guys met? Sorry for.
We met in Bali.
In Bali.
In Bali.
Right.
What? Oh my God! That's amazing.
Yeah.
Digital nomads location, one of the favorite ones.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Wow.
Totally. And so he was at the time a boyfriend, and we came to I don't know, just for a little bit, and then the pandemic happened, and I couldn't leave anymore. And German government has been so accommodating because they didn't kick anyone out. I was here on a visa, and they said, like, because they could have sent me away, to Belarus or the US, how many countries did, but they said, okay, until we figure this out, people who are here can stay.
Yeah.
And so that was very lucky for us in our relationship, because we didn't have to like go live in different continents. And so kind of that just was very random. So we spent some months here, and then we kind of liked it and decided that it's a good hub. Berlin is a great hub for work-life balance. Has lots of startups, it has lots of parks, it has lots of, I don't know, cool places. And we just decided that let's try it out now.
And it's working.
It's working, but we will move.
Oh yeah.
Eventually.
It ain't it. So we like it, but we're not crazy about it. So we'll see. But it's working for us for now. And I think Europe, I would not imagine having a child in the US right now. Like the level of stress that you experience living in the US, be responsible for another human being, is just too much to handle. And I feel like Berlin is a very child-friendly, pregnancy-friendly.
That's the thing that you have to think right now, where you want to raise your kid,
Oh yeah.
I guess Berlin is a good place for it. What you say? It is. Yeah, I could see lots of kids playing in the park. It's one of my favorite cities, actually. I've ever been in Berlin. I really love it. Okay, I have this tourist, perspective of going there, and it was pretty cool. And I got friends who lives there, and people say good stuff, bad stuff sometimes. But for kids, I could see that kids were doing actually great, and the schools there is pretty cool. So wow.
Yeah, it's
I wish you lots of luck.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I also praise Berlin. Like I was there a couple of weeks ago visiting some friends, and I lived in the Netherlands for a few months. I think like 5-6 months, and I really liked the Netherlands. I loved the culture. I loved how people were so activists. They didn't like something, they spoke about it, and I love how progressive the country was and how libertarian it also was and liberal. The only thing in Berlin that kind of pisses me off is how backwards, like some administrative
papers,
like papers,
Yeah.
like money. You need to use money, physical cash in the country, which is crazy to me. But then you have such great transportation, and there's a lot of good things in Berlin. It's like a big hub, as you said. It's such a big city, but it's easy to get around, and it's not expensive. Also, the transportation and the monthly card and everything, card to use the metros and everything. It's quite affordable, and you earn really good money in the country. So only the admin stuff, that would be the only thing that kind of pissed me off if I lived there.
Oh my God, you have no idea, especially like having moved from the US and having like looking at things with this American mindset. I was this proverbial obnoxious American throwing tantrums everywhere. I will admit to it. And I didn't even know how bad it looked. I mean, I wasn't like, throwing like real tantrums. I was ranting to my friends. But the customer service, the slowness of everything, the hearing no in places where there is a way to work things out, but there is just no desire to work things out, because if you just go by instruction, you don't have to think about. And the cash. Oh, the cash. What is this thing
Makes
that I
no
have
fucking sense.
Yeah.
One of the biggest cities in Europe still uses cash.
Yeah.
With the euro.
And that cash only. Like let's be clear.
Yeah.
It's not that you have an option for cash. You have lots of cash only places. So unless So definitely I hear you.
Except for tourism, because sometimes you have to pay a tax for withdraw money. So actually not too good. I had this feeling of needing cash for everything. I went to a Borussia Dortmund match, and even in a match where people tourism go, people from abroad goes, they only accept cash, and I was like, fuck, I'm Brazilian, I earning real, bro, and I have to withdraw money right here and spending a tax almost 10 reais for withdrawing 20 euros. So it was like, fuck.
I'll tell you what. So like I went to Florianopolis in Brazil. I spent like a few months there. There was a literal, like not even a beach shack. There was a stand, a coconut stand on the way from the house to the beach. Randomly in the middle of a sand dune, they sold coconut water, beer, and pastel.
Yeah.
Pastel. I could pay with my iPhone. This random ass place in the middle of nowhere, like not even where all the beach restaurant, but on the way in the middle, I could pay with my iPhone.
South of Brazil is actually pretty developing those technology stuff. Even here in Rio, as well. Even though, I mean, those guys who guard your car and you have to pay, they accept, those transfers by phone. So yeah, it's getting insane right here in Rio, and it's pretty good. I mean, it is amazing. I almost don't have money right here. If you ask me to show you a bill right here, I don't have it because I'm using actually electronic money, let's say, for everything.
Germans could never. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, especially Berlin. I feel like it's a very uniquely Berlin thing. Partly because Berlin is a little bit, I would say, anti-capitalist. Like there's definitely this mentality of, fuck capitalists and like, let's do things our way. So there's some places who just don't, have transactions on their books. And that is the reason. They're like, we want, and Berlin motto is poor but sexy. So it's this idea of like, we don't need to participate in those, progressive things. We can just go to clubs and be countercultural, and things should be free. So there's a different mentality here.
I would add, like, as our guest from the Philippines also said, don't fix what's not broken. A lot of Germans, they just think that way, like it's been working, so why change it? And that's a big difference that I would say from Germans to Dutch people. It's that crazy mentality difference. Like Dutch people, they don't like something, they go to the streets, and that will change. I still remember when events were canceled in 2021, the Dutch people in Amsterdam, they did a riot with events at the same time, illegal events, and because of that, the government said, "Okay, you know what? Events will come back." And the next week, we had festivals.
Wow,
that's crazy. That's the difference. I would tell you to try to go to the Netherlands. I think you'd like it. I think you'd like it.
It's on my we have like a list of running list of destinations where we would want to live, and Amsterdam is on there. If it wasn't for the weather, it's just the weather.
Yeah. You get used to it. The rain is not cold though. It's annoying, but I was so used to riding my bike with a carpa and just knowing that I would be wet either way. And if I had that on my mind, I would be like, you know what? I'm just gonna make the most of it. And you can see like people are still out on the streets doing stuff when it's raining. In Portugal, if it's raining, even after it rains, people will still be inside, indoors. In Amsterdam, it's like it's crazy. Like people will still be playing, like kids will be playing on the streets with rain pouring on them. So
I'm like, I'm so impressed and terrified by this because I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, I know the Dutch, they're just like complete savages when it comes to weather conditions. They don't care. It's -20, it's snowing, it's ice, it's raining. They're bicycling. And I'm like, I'm so impressed. But I'm also like, I just don't have that in me. But I admire it. I'm like, I look at them and I'm like, wow, you're superheroes.
Yeah.
But it's a different mentality for sure.
And every time that you meet a Dutch person abroad, they'll be the first ones to say, let's hike. You know that mountain that's 3 kilometers up? Let's hike it tomorrow morning, 8 p.m. when you're partying in a club at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
They're the first ones to say 8 a.m. Let's hike to that mountain. It's I love them so much. I really do. I have a soft spot for the Netherlands. So yeah. This turned into a US Belgium, Amsterdam, Berlin episode.
Worldwide podcast.
That's the thing to say. Love it.
Yeah, 100% worldwide. Going back to Belarus. So I've heard that it is the lungs of Europe because it has like 40% of forests. How crazy is that? And I guess also I remember talking to someone from, he was from he wasn't from Lithuania, but he lived there, and he was saying that he once visited Belarus, and he said that it's also like pretty flat, like the Netherlands. There's almost no mountains. And he got surprised because he knew like there were a lot of forests, so he was like, okay, if there's forest, there's going to be like mountains, but there weren't. So
that is so funny. I'm giggling because when my then boyfriend at the time, he was visiting Belarus, and he was like, tell me what's Belarus like? And I was like, it's nice and flat. And he and he just really laughed at it and found it so peculiar. And then it's now a running joke because he went there and he's like, yeah, it's a really good way to describe it. It's nice and flat and very green.
Very good, which is interesting because again, Eastern Europe, you think like a dark, like gray place, but then Belarus is like super green with a lot of forests. Like, yeah, I don't remember the percentage, but it's like 30% forests, super
it's
green.
A lot. And there's also this nickname for Belarus in Belarus itself, blue-eyed, Belarus моя синеокая. It's like my blue-eyed Belarus, and that's because it also has lots of lakes. So the nature is quite beautiful, which is why when the country gets rid of its bullshit, there's so much potential for tourism. The people are so nice. It's progressive. They're great. There used to be a great club culture in Belarus, believe it or not. When I was young, like in my college years, the club culture was fantastic. There are great restaurants. There's great hospitality. People are welcoming. They're nice. They're curious. The roads are good. I would even say great. Maybe for Eastern European standards, but still, it's safe. It's very safe. There's very little violent crime. The only violent criminal is at the top, and he's
unfortunately,
and he's circle. So I think it has so much potential, and yeah, I'm really hoping for better days.
No,
for sure.
100%.
Amazing. So guys, we are coming to an end of our podcast. It's crazy. I mean, how fast this has passed by. But so before finishing it up, Guilherme wants to do the question he does every single episode. So feel free, buddy.
For sure. And again, this was great. Like we went
amazing
so over the place. But I always love, and Anastasia, you are so great because you're so interesting because you've been to a lot of places. I'm always fascinated to people who lived abroad, not just traveled, who lived abroad, because a lot of times you can only really grasp the culture and integrate yourself when you live in the country. A lot of people, they say, oh, I went to Tanzania, but then they like stayed in a resort for 1 week and they didn't really see anything.
The real face of the country, right?
Yeah, I really respect when someone lives in another country because they're willing to say, okay, my culture is this and my habits are this, but I'm willing to integrate it to something new. I'm willing to learn, to adapt.
Getting out of the comfort zone. So yeah. Wow, amazing.
So I really like that, and I applaud you for it. So I just wanted to say that for sure. And I wish you could talk so much more about so much stuff, like Bali, for example, like so much other. But yeah, let's either this podcast is 1 hour or 3 hours.
Well, maybe you guys, you keep growing a few years down the line, you can have me on again. We'll see.
100%.
For real.
For sure. So yeah, Anastasia, we went with this open-ended question, and that is, what is the thing that makes you the most proud about being from Belarus? What would the defining thing would be for you?
When you went abroad, people were asking you, what did you say?
That is a very, very difficult question to answer. And I'll tell you why. I think I just hold lots of shame currently in my mind about the situation in Belarus. And so pride, almost I can't quite connect to that feeling of pride. But give me a moment. Here, I have an answer. I think Belarusians are really hardworking, and they have an amazing work ethic. And I think that is not uniquely Belarusian thing, but I feel like for me, that's what the culture gave me. The culture gave me a work ethic and the desire to do things well. And when I have something I'm responsible for, I have the desire to do it well. And I think that is not, you can say that a lot about a lot of countries, but I think it's definitely a very Belarusian thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I'm proud of it. I'm value it. Like it's good. But I don't know. I'm very sad because I can't connect with.
It was actually a very great answer. Actually, very great answer. I don't know if Guilherme agrees with me, but yeah, it was pretty cool answer actually.
100%. And again, you went to the US and you brought that hard workness to you, and I could see it, and João could see it as well. How you would talk about working there.
Yeah.
And actually, a lot of people they look down on like waitering. What? No, I'm never gonna waiter.
Sure.
Like,
and
even if they're like 25, they're like, I would never waiter. That's like below my level. But you went there and you waited, and you showed that this is a great way to make money, to start and everything, and to build your career on. So that already demonstrates a very hardworking culture. 100%. So yeah,
amazing. Yeah, I mean, because you're hardworking, you could adapt to the countries that you traveling and working, and also you having communication with people and adapting to the job. So this resilience, kind of hard word to say, resilience that you got, it might be because you're hardworking, and also you have this Belarusian feeling inside yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, I think resilience would be another one. I think Belarusians are definitely very resilient for how much shit the country has faced, and they still believe and they still aspire. I think that's resilience is very strong. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, so wow, right. Anastasia. Right. Almost got it wrong. The American way. Talking about US, the whole episode make me Thank you so much for accepting the invitation. We wish lots of luck and lots of health for your kid that is going to be born soon. And for you, we wish a lot of luck, even you and your husband. What an amazing guy. We want him in the podcast. Where is he from? He's German.
He's German.
So we can do in the future a podcast with you both right here. Why not? So wow, thank you so much for accepting the invitation. Wish you lots of health and Happy New Year.
For sure. Happy New Year. To every single person listening. 100%. And yeah, guys, feel free to listen to our episodes on our Spotify and Apple Podcasts at Worldwide Podcast, and follow our socials at Podcast WWP. We now have a YouTube channel. Actually, it will come out today with our Philippines episode, and we're gonna have video there, and it's very cool. I'm really excited for it because it's another way for people to listen to us, but also view our emotions and expressions and everything else. So definitely look for that, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. So bye.
See you, dears.
Cheers.